Alright guys, Warcraft, it's finally here. Um, so, I have a couple precursors to this. Generally, I'm one of those that, I like to read movie reviews, but I don't like to, I just kind of like to get a general sense of how the public feels. I don't let critic reviews determine whether or not I go see a movie, because sometimes I agree, sometimes don't. That's someone else's opinion. That's why that's why so many movies are made. But with this one, it's a bit hard not to. I think it was last time I looked, it was sitting at an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. So obviously that had me a little worried. I was still going to go see it no matter what. Yeah, it had me a little concerned. And so I just want to start off by saying no, it's not that bad. So just straight up. So a bit of my history with Warcraft. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get into WoW. I have played it, but at the time it was in its prime, WoW, Burning Crusades, and then into Lich King, depending on who you talk to. I was too young to get a job, and my parents wouldn't pay for it. And at that point, $15 a month is like a fortune. So I wasn't able to get into WoW, but I did play a lot of Warcraft 2 and 3 growing up. Warcraft 2 was pretty much my childhood, and Warcraft 3 came a little bit later, but I played through both Reign of Chaos and Frozen Throne multiple times. So while I'm not a Warcraft lore aficionado, I do know more than your average person, and I've always been really, really intrigued by the lore, so that may or may not influence my opinion on the movie. I don't know, but we'll just jump in. Directed by Duncan Jones, obviously. It's based on a mixture of Warcraft 1 and World of Warcraft lore. I see all of the reviews, obviously, where people haven't played the game say it's based on World of Warcraft, which you can't really blame them for saying, just because nobody knows Warcraft. People know World of Warcraft. Even if you don't play, that's what they know. But when Warcraft 1 was made, there was a semblance of a story, but not enough, not enough to really mean anything. Once Warcraft 2, so 1 was like extremely bare bones. Warcraft 2 laid a little bit more, and then Warcraft 3 was when they really started getting into the lore, and then obviously up through WoW and everything. But the lore's been retconned so many times, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but anyways. So there were lots of things that I liked about the movie and some that I didn't. We'll start with the pros first and then go to the cons. Obviously, the big selling point is the looks, the CG. This movie is gorgeous. The best CG that I've seen in a movie to date. The orcs look really good. The blending of the orcs and humans, like in fight scenes and everything, looks really good. There were a couple spots where I was able to see, like, for example, Lothar goes to pet a griffin, and you can see his hand go through the feathers. Just little stuff like that. If you're not watching for it, you'll miss it. But just small things like that where, the CG kind of breaks a little bit. But for the most part, it looks really good. And they actually did a really good job of blending it in with the background. That was my biggest concern, was that everything would just look like a green screen. And obviously there's some points, like when it does big zooms over Stormwind, obviously that's CG, it's not real. But they managed to blend it actually really well. I was actually really impressed with how he blended it with the backgrounds. The only character that I really had a problem with, and this is Gul'dan, in the sense that he was the only one that I could, for lack of a better word, tell that he was CG. The CG was still really good, but it was almost like they worked on all the other characters, and he was the very last one that they were doing touch-ups on, and they didn't have enough time to finish. And so they're like, well, he's mostly there. Okay, that's good. And so he still looks really good, but he was probably, out of all of them, he was the one where it's kind of like, that guy looks a little CG. So the story is pretty standard. If you've seen the trailer, you know what the story is. That orcs are looking to move worlds. Humans are like, hey now, this is our turf. Like, back off, bro. And then the Durotans and the Frostwolves, they don't really like how Gul'dan does things, and they kind of want to break away, and so they want to work with the humans to take down Gul'dan. Pretty standard plot. The orc side of it, because up until probably about 3/4 of the way through the movie, it flips back and forth between the humans and the orcs, just kind of telling each side. The orc side was really, really good. It was done extremely well. The acting was really good. I was very impressed with how it drew me in. And maybe, again, like I said, I've always had a fascination with the Warcraft lore, and so maybe that's just kind of my personality of really, really liking that part. And so I really, really liked that part. The humans was my biggest complaint of the movie. I don't know if it was just a combination of the acting and the writing of the characters or whatever, but the humans were just not interesting to me, like, at all. It's really interesting because with when you go into video game movies, I mean, it's obviously not practical, but you want, if like in an ideal situation, you would want to get a full cast of people, ideally of everyone who basically is a Warcraft nerd, and so they know everything, they know everything, and they can really bring a lot to the table. If you can't have that, you want to get people that are intrigued by it, so they actually do their research, they look into the character, they're not just collecting a paycheck, they actually want to be there, they want to do a good job. And everyone on the orc side fell into that category. I know that the actor, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the actor for Orgrim Doomhammer is actually a really big WoW fan. I saw an interview on, I want to say it was Conan, it might have been Jimmy Fallon, but where he was like in a really down point in his life, and so he actually gained like 50 or 100 pounds and just played WoW for like 2 years straight. It's like, that is so cool, because you know that guy's there, he loves what he's there for, and he does a good job. All of the other actors, as far as I know, I mean, if they played WoW, I don't know, but they weren't like big fans about it, but they all did really, really well for the orcs. You could tell that everyone was wanting to do a good job and everything, and then the humans were they were terrible. Okay, that's not true. They weren't terrible. I really liked Ben Foster as Medivh. I thought he did a really good job. Dominic Cooper as King Lane. I'm a fan of Dominic Cooper, and he just kind of did his Dominic Cooper thing, and so I didn't really have any complaints there. He wasn't anything special, but he wasn't awful. Travis Fimmel as Lothar. It depended on the scene for me. Some scenes, especially one where, not to spoil anything, but something emotional happens involving him, and he was actually really good. I was like, wow, he was committing to the scene, but then there's other scenes where he was just terrible. It was also like he couldn't pick an accent. It's like he kept switching back and forth between like a mild British accent to American. Like, he couldn't stick with an accent. That kind of really bothered me. There were some of the other humans that were just there. Khadgar, the young mage. At the beginning, he really drove me up the wall. But as the movie went on, he kind of grew on me. And I want to say, I don't know if Duncan Jones did this on purpose, or if that's just kind of how it happened, or maybe it's just me, but I want to say that that's like an ultimate success, because he is supposed to be the naive young mage that's in training, that is basically, for lack of a better word, a kid. No one takes him seriously, no one believes him. And then by the end, people start being like, oh, maybe this kid does know what he's talking about and everything. And so by the end of the movie, he actually grew on me a little bit. So I was happy with that. But my biggest complaint, and was just Paula Patton. Now, don't get me wrong, I love her. She's very attractive. She does really well in all the other movies that she's in. One of my favorites of hers, Mission Impossible 4. She's excellent in Mission Impossible 4. But in this, I wanted to punch her in the face every single scene she was in. It was like, and again, I don't know if this is direction or if this is her acting or whatever, but it was like she was intentionally trying to be 120% over the top all the time. And it's like, no, that's not what that needs. You need to rein it in. You need to embody the character, but not force it out. And it felt like she was forcing it. And kind of, again, on switching accents, it's like there was a part where kind of when the humans first meet her, again, without going into spoilers, basically when the humans first meet her, she was like switching back and forth between speaking normally, like, hey, what are you guys doing? And like a weird tribal speech where she's like, orcs come, kill everyone, and just stuff like that. And it's like, what? Like, what? She just kept switching back and forth, and she was I mean, the humans were my least favorite part, and she's technically half human, but she was definitely my least favorite part of this movie, which kills me to say, because she's great and I love her, but she was just terrible in this movie. Kind of to go on, some of the other story elements I didn't like. There were some subplots that I didn't care for. Again, without going into spoilers, there's a romance subplot that I just thought was unnecessary. There's a subplot with Lothar and his son that could have, again, and I don't know if this is due to Travis Fimmell's acting or just how it was implemented, but I didn't really care for it all that much. There was one spot in that whole relationship where I was kind of like, oh, tug at the heartstrings a little bit, but other than that, I did not care for that. So I've pretty much gone over everything, I think. The fight scenes are really cool. The problem with this movie is that because it's engineered to where you don't need to know Warcraft lore to know what's going on, but if you do, it obviously enhances your understanding of what's going on, you know, a little bit more about these characters and who they are. And so as I was watching this movie, I was watching it as a Warcraft lore knower, but I was also trying to separate myself and think about it as someone who knows nothing at all about Warcraft and just coming in and watching it fresh. And from that perspective, I can understand why people would have a hard time with it. There was a lot put into the movie all at once, and while I do think that they explained it pretty well for the most part, like I said, I could easily see where some people... I mean, again, I think the 18% on Rotten Tomatoes is absolutely atrocious. As far as video game movies go, this is the best one that we've had yet, hands down. And so it kills me. I mean, and, you know, like I said, critics' opinions don't matter, but at the same time, it's like you want the movie to just have been the first great video game movie that not everyone's going to love it, but like almost everyone loves, and everyone's like, wow, that was really good. And unfortunately, this wasn't that. But so trying to kind of separate it as a Warcraft watcher and a going in fresh, I don't want to say don't go see it, because I really enjoyed it. I think that those who are just fans of that type of fantasy in general will really enjoy it, but at the same time, I can see how people might get bored or not get interested just because there's a lot of information being thrown at you, and you're basically just being introduced to this world all at once, and so it's just kind of a lot to swallow. The pacing in the movie sometimes was a little dull. There were a couple times where I'm like, oh, okay, can we move? You know, like, not necessarily into a fight scene, but it was just... I mean, everything that happened in the movie in regards to the main story was, should have happened, but they could have handled it better to where you're just not bored. Something else I did want to touch on in regards to the looks, obviously the CGI was really good, but just the aesthetic of the movie was excellent. I loved the look of all of the armor and the swords and the buildings and everything. It looks good, but it also kind of retains a little bit of that cartoony vibe that WoW has. So Duncan Jones, in terms of visual, he nailed it. I think that people are just being really unfair to his movie just because I think this is one of those movies where people are just ready to hate. One, because it's a video game movie, and to be fair, most people do deserve a reason to hate video game movies because they've almost all been trash in the past. So that makes sense, but at the same time, you're like, well, those movies have no relation to this. If Duncan Jones had directed a series of terrible, terrible video game movies and then was directing Warcraft, then you'd have kind of the expectation of going in there with that attitude because you'd expect it to be like the rest of them. But whereas this is his first video game movie, you can't really compare it to all those previous movies because there's no relation there at all. I lost my train of thought. I had something else that I was wanting to say, but I do recommend to go see it. My final score would probably be it's a very, very strong 7 out of 10. I think this was a good movie, especially I'm very, very hopeful. This is one of the conflicting things about it, because while I enjoyed this one, there were problems that I had, I'm just thinking of the future, and that gets me really, really excited, because where they could go with it is, they could just go, obviously the big one, the Rise of Arthas, turning into the Lich King. Oh my gosh. If they could just go so many places with this, and I think that this movie will make a profit, because I was listening to someone talk to work today. It made like, I want to say, what was it? It was like, I almost wanted to say it was like 80 or 90 million. That sounds a little high though. But like 80 or 90 million dollars in China in one day, and it's like, what? Like, that's freaking insane. And so I think that this movie will make enough to where they will make another one. What they need to learn for the next one, in my opinion, what they need to do with the next one is make the humans just interesting in general. That was the biggest, aside from Paula Patton, that was the biggest flaw in this movie, was that the humans were just not interesting at all. And like I mentioned, I think it's a combination of the actors. I don't want to say that they didn't care, because obviously I don't know them and whatever, but it just kind of felt like most of them didn't care, and that they were just there for a paycheck. Um, and just more reasoning about it, because you could, I was reading this thing way back when they were doing promotions, where Duncan Jones said, you know, obviously I mean, and this isn't correct, but when you see it, you're like, oh, the humans are the good guys and the orcs are the bad guys. And he wanted to be like, you know, I want to present both sides, you know, you'll feel for both sides or whatever. And I can really feel like he tried to do that, and he succeeded beautifully with the orcs. You really feel for them. The characters are all really, really good. You know, there's things that happen that you really feel for them, and then the humans are just a bunch of cardboard stand-ins, and that just, it makes me sad. But like I said, as far as video game movies go, excellent. And when it comes down to it, it accomplished a couple things that I think that's all that's important. I don't regret buying my ticket. I would see it again in theaters. I will buy it when it comes out on Blu-ray, DVD, whatever, and it makes me want to go play Warcraft. So of those four things, I think it succeeded in terms of a movie and of a Warcraft movie. In terms of a movie, it succeeded because I paid $10 for my ticket. I don't regret that one bit. I'd go see it again, and I'll buy it when it comes out. And those are two of the biggest determining factors, is, you know, okay, movie, cast, writing, whatever, all aside, it's like, did you enjoy yourself, and will you watch it again? Yes and yes. And then, yeah, now I want to go play through Warcraft 3 again, because Warcraft 3 has such great lore. If they get into stuff with Arthas, and they get into everything with Illidan and Maeve, and oh, there's so many cool places that they could go if it gets there. And so I'm hoping that whether Duncan, if they do another one, I'm hoping that they do another one. If Duncan Jones directs it, or if they bring in a new director, I just hope that they really care about this stuff, and that they really listen to the fans, listen to what, I mean, you can only go so far with what the fans want, but they try and please the fans, as well as just learn from the criticism of this one to make it better. And speaking of fans, one more thing that I did forget, there's some great fan service in this movie. I won't spoil anything, but there's just a couple moments where it's like, yeah, okay, that's awesome, you know, total Warcraft fan service right there. So it seems like, for the most part, Duncan Jones got a really good hold on balancing trying to make a movie, you know, trying to make a video game movie, trying to please the fans. He may have failed in some areas, but you could tell that he really sat down and he thought about it, and he looked through this lore, and he's like, okay, you know, we want to make a good story with the lore, we want to throw in some stuff in there to please the fans that doesn't detract from the movie, you know, just kind of I don't want to say minor, but like background things that fans will pick up on that other people won't really notice. And so I'm hoping that with the next movie, whether they do some Warcraft 2 stuff, if they just jump right into Warcraft 3, if they do something else, whatever. But I'm just really hoping that they learn from it, that they can improve, because it's sitting, in my opinion, where Assassin's Creed 1, the game, was sitting. It was a good game. It had some pitfalls, it had some good things, and they can either just do the same thing over again and nah, or they can learn from it, listen to the fans, and then put out an Assassin's Creed 2, which just floors everything. You know, whether or not you liked Assassin's Creed 2, which, let's be honest, you're insane if you didn't, you can't deny that if you compare Assassin's Creed 1 and 2, not comparing like graphics or anything like that, just strictly gameplay enhancements, there's nothing that's a detracting, except for maybe the stupid bards, but we don't need to go there. And, you know, they did fleshed out characters that actually have story and personality. They did more, for lack of a better word, mini games, that, you know, more activities to do. They increased gameplay, you know, added more gameplay variability. They took everything good about Assassin's Creed 1, added to it, and made it better. And that's what they need to do right now. It's a pretty pivotal moment, I think, where they could really turn these movies into something great if they are willing to listen to the criticism, if they're willing to adapt that and, you know, add that and keep going. Obviously, only time will tell. Like I said, I hope they make another one, because I did enjoy myself and I will buy it. But we'll see. Anyways, I think that's it for my review. If you guys have any questions or comments, just let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys.